2 months ago, I received an email that changed how I view younger women's attraction to older men forever. Mark, I need to tell you something that happened last night. The email was from James, a 68-year-old man who just returned from a charity gala where 3 women in their 30s had competed for his attention all evening. But here's the fascinating part. Just 4 months earlier, he'd been rejected by a 45-year-old woman for being too old. What changed after studying thousands of successful age gap relationships? Researchers discovered something shocking. Men over 65 who display certain specific traits are actually perceived as more attractive than men 20 years younger, and it has nothing to do with money status or trying to act younger. In the next few minutes, I'll share 10 powerful traits that make younger women naturally drawn to men over 65. But more importantly, I'll show you how to embody these traits authentically. Let's dive in. Trait number 1. The wisdom paradox. During my research on this topic, I figured out something fascinating. Men who displayed what researchers called curious ignorance were rated way more attractive than those who tried to prove their wisdom. Let me show you what this looks like at that charity. James was talking with Sarah, a 34-year-old executive. Instead of telling her about his decades of business experience or trying to prove his expertise, he simply asked, "What's the biggest lesson you've learned in your career so far?" Her response, she talked for 35 minutes straight, later telling her friends that James was the most intellectually stimulating man she'd ever met. The irony, he barely talked for even 5 minutes. He used what I call reflective curiosity, asking thoughtful follow-up questions that made her feel deeply understood. But here's what makes this trait so powerful. When you stop trying to prove your wisdom and instead become genuinely curious about her experiences, you activate what psychologists call the reverse mentor, your effect. She begins to value your perspective precisely because you're not forcing it on her. Trait number 2, the presence principle. This one shocked even me. Research showed that men over 65 who mastered what psychologists call temporal presence were consistently rated as the most attractive, regardless of their physical appearance. Michael, a 71-year-old man, discovered this by accident during a dinner date with a 38-year-old woman. He put his phone away and gave her his complete, undivided attention. No stories about the good old days, no worries about the future, just pure engaged presence in the moment. The result, she later told him, it was the first time she'd felt truly seen in years. You see, younger women are surrounded by men their age who are constantly distracted, always checking phones, always somewhere else. Mentally, when you master temporal presence, you become a rare oasis of genuine connection. Trait number 3, the certainty switch. This is where everything changes at the gala. James demonstrated this perfectly when asked about dinner plans. He didn't send Yelp reviews or ask endless questions about preferences. Instead, he simply said, "I know a perfect place. Trust me." That simple display of decisive confidence triggered what researchers call the certainty response. But here's the fascinating part. It's not about being controlling. It's about showing that you're comfortable making decisions without seeking approval. When a younger woman experiences this kind of quiet, confident certainty, it creates a powerful attraction trigger that younger men simply can't match. The key is what we call flexible certainty, being decisive while remaining open to her input. When James chose the restaurant, he also added, "Unless you have any allergies." "I should know about this" showed both leadership and consideration, a combination that younger women find irresistible in older men. Trait number 4, temporal authority. This is where most men over 65 accidentally sabotage themselves when faced with age-related comments. They either get defensive or try to joke it away. But the research shows something fascinating. Men who display temporal authority are 3.7 times more likely to be pursued by younger women. Let me show you how Michael mastered this when that 38-year-old woman tested him with the classic "You're too old for me" line. He didn't apologize or make a joke. Instead, he smiled confidently and said, "The real question is whether you're mature enough for this connection." The shift in her energy was instant. You see, temporal authority isn't about defending your age. It's about owning it so completely that it becomes your strength. Studies show this kind of confident self-acceptance triggers deep attraction in younger women. Great number 5, the experiences canvas. Here's where James's transformation at the gala really took off. Instead of telling stories about his past achievements, he created what psychologists call shared future projections. When a 34-year-old mentioned her love of travel, he didn't launch into stories about places he'd been. Instead, he said, "You know what would be fascinating? Exploring the hidden restaurants of Barcelona together. You with your fresh perspective, me with my years of discovering local secrets." This technique creates a situation called experiential resonance painting, pictures of shared experiences that feel both exciting and enriched by your years of wisdom. It's not about where you've been, it's about the unique experiences you could share together. Trait number 6, the maturity paradox. Recent studies revealed something. Count intuitive men who balance maturity with playfulness were rated as 72% more attractive than those who maintained a purely serious demeanor. At the gala, James demonstrated this perfectly during a serious conversation about career goals. He suddenly smiled and said, "You know, after 40 years in business, I've learned that the secret to success is knowing when to be completely ridiculous." This kind of selective playfulness coming from a place of deep confidence creates attraction. Contrast, it makes you even more intriguing because it's unexpected. Trait number 7, the profound simplicity. This trait was game-changing for James. Instead of trying to impress with complex stories or sophisticated knowledge, he mastered it with the 3-word method. When a woman shared something meaningful, he'd respond with just 3 carefully chosen words that demonstrated deep understanding. For example, when she shared her business challenges, instead of giving advice, he simply said, "You'll solve this." The impact was immediate and powerful. In psychology, this approach is called wisdom attraction. It is the perception of deep understanding without the need to prove it. Doctor number 8, the reverse age frame. Harvard researchers discovered something fascinating. When older men display this trait, younger women experience temporal attraction inversion, where your age becomes an advantage rather than a barrier. The key is reframing age differences as complementary strengths. When age comes up in conversation, you might say, "Our different perspectives are exactly what makes this interesting." This creates what we call a perspective bridge, turning potential obstacles into unique advantages. Trait number 9, the legacy effect. Younger women are powerfully attracted to what psychologists call legacy potential. Not just your achievements, but your ability to guide and inspire. James demonstrated this perfectly when he told a 35-year-old entrepreneur, "I see qualities in you that remind me of the most successful people I've known." Notice he didn't offer direct advice. He showed her he could recognize and nurture her potential. Trait number 10, the ultimate paradox. This final trait combines everything we've discussed into one powerful principle: authentic vulnerability balanced with unshakable confidence. At the gala's end, when James was directly challenged about his age, he said something unforgettable. "You're right. I have lived through experiences you can only imagine, made mistakes you haven't had the chance to make yet, and learned lessons that took decades to understand. The question isn't whether I'm too old for you. It's whether you're ready for someone who knows exactly who they are." Everyone in the room who could hear them was looking at James with eyes wide open. That moment of complete authenticity, delivered with absolute confidence, created what researchers call the attraction paradox, where potential barriers transform into irresistible attractive forces. That night, James didn't just attract younger women. He discovered that age wasn't just not an issue, it became his greatest advantage. And now it's your turn.